Hello. Today I'm going to tie for you another clinger nymph. I did one recently with lively legs, but today I'm going to use a little different method for the abdomen and something totally different for the legs and thorax. So here's a picture. I'd call it a heptagenidae, but I'm probably butchering the pronunciation. I'm going to do it on a fulling mill size 16 hook. And here's some of the thin skin that I've had laying around, and I've cut it into strips and used it for a wing case. But my wife and I have a Cricut, and we learned to use the software, and I made a pattern for these legs that's somewhere between what's commercially available and probably the real thing. So let's get started, and we'll get the thread on the hook, and I can talk more about the design and the idea. So in the last video, I achieved the profile that I was after. And after that triangular shape, these things kind of cling to the bottom of the rocks. And as they move around, they've got this little flat profile that's kind of wide in the front, and they're all legs. So that's what I'm shooting for, and I think that's the magic of the lively legs. And love it or hate it, it's kind of like egg patterns and silly worms or squirmy wormies, but that stuff's around to stay and it does catch fish, so plastic legs aren't a bad idea either. And I don't want to take anything away from the lively legs guys. They do a real good job, and they make a lot of different colors and patterns and everything, and I'm not going to give them up. But I had the thin skin, I had the tool, and it's fun to play with that computer design stuff and the cutting, and so I spent the time and we made some legs. So here, this is the different technique that I'm going to use for the abdomen. I used an aftershaft feather. One of you folks pointed out that the marabou plume might have been a great idea. I don't have any gray, and that, rather than run to the store or order some, I've been using these aftershaft feathers from the partridge skin. But I'm going to do this one in a loop. The last one I did, I wound it from front to back and I cross-wrapped it, and it worked fine. Didn't come out quite as well as I'd like. So I'm going to try yet a different technique today. So I think the magic here is I put this in the clip and wax the thread so it doesn't slide around too much. And we're going to just make a fuzzy aftershaft chenille. So I'm going to twist that up. I've got a shepherd's hook down below, so it's no bearings and no weight, so I can't spin it, so other than by hand, and that's what you see me doing here. So we'll get it spun up and give it a little push to make it tighter, and then I'll start wrapping. I'm going to use the rotary feature of the vise, and once I get back to the starting point right in front of the tail, uh, then I'm going to, in between wraps, I'm going to start to pull that fuzz out of the way. So, and this is the peril of using wax on dubbing and wax on these loops, is it kind of mats down some of the feather or some of the dubbing. And in this case, I don't think I mind so much, but that's why you'll see a lot of the professionals, they're out there saying, well, I don't use wax, and this is why. It kind of mats things down. But I think it adds to the look here. It doesn't hurt anything. And there we go. That's what I was after back there. I want something to kind of be triangular shaped and kind of wave around as gills. So I'm struggling a little bit here to stay between the camera. I bump it a couple of times throughout the process, and trying to do what's best for you guys too here, so that I'm close enough and zoomed in and you can see what I'm up to. So we'll tie that off. And zoom in a little bit now. And have to play with the focus and hope the camera kind of does its thing. Now here, because of the way I'm going to tie those legs in, I want to get enough wraps behind the eye of the thread to make sure that sharp edge, and if it's not quite closed, we want to make sure that gets covered. So here's my pattern that was cut out of the thin skin. But I'm tying it in kind of backwards. I only left one tab. I don't know. I didn't do a lot of research on what's out there commercially. I've seen some of these things and half paid attention to them. Again, this was just for the fun of the project, to make something for me with the Cricut. I've been doing designs and shirts and coffee mugs for everybody else, and I don't know. There's always some extra pride in doing some of these things yourself. So I got the tab tied in, and we're going to let this thing hang out there a while. And the only other really real ingredient here is some dubbing. So I'm going to use rabbit fur dubbing. And this stuff, you'll see me tug on these legs throughout the process. That's some pretty tough stuff. So I think the fish can chew on them a while, and I don't think it'll, you know, damage anything right away. Hope to catch a couple of fish before these fall apart. So this is just rabbit fur, some hairs here that I trimmed and mixed together, kind of blended, and got some guard hairs in it. It's kind of picky. And we'll come up behind the eye. And here I'm kind of going for a, thicker in the front, a thick thorax, and then go back to a fine, like a waist. Um, could have been thick the whole way, I guess. It didn't really matter. So we need a little more dubbing and work out that shape. I didn't mention it, but the tail were just fibers from that partridge skin, and I probably left it a little longer than some on some patterns. But so I'm going to come back a couple of eye lengths behind the hook eye and park the thread. But what I kind of realized, you probably want to do a couple extra wraps there, so that when you fold this over, it doesn't. There's some base there to wrap this around, so that, or to when you tie this down, so that it doesn't wrap around too much. When it was a smaller diameter, the legs kind of went in all directions, the front and the middle set of legs. But again, in the world of bugs, and especially crippled bugs or something floating downstream that looks edible, the legs going in multiple directions I don't think hurt. So I'm going to come in and kind of get between the legs here and do a 5-turn whip finish. But you can see without a camera, and after this is the very first one that I've tied, so but without a camera and a little practice, I think I could make this into a sort of a guide fly and pound these out pretty quick. And you could weight these; they could crawl across the bottom. So you saw me cut away. That's because I didn't want you to wait for me to go find my head cement and get ready and do all those things. So I apologize for the cuts and the edits. I'm not chopping out any bad thing. I'm trying to remove some dead space. Nobody watches the full 9 or 10 minutes anyways. So you'll see we've got a band of thread on the bottom. I could have left that. It bothered me a little bit to leave thread that's not, um, doesn't have head cement. So I kind of sneak back in here and lay a little bit right on those wraps of thread. But that's it. That's kind of how I left it. I trimmed off that long fuzz and or those long wild hairs in the front, and I'm going to fish it. So I can't imagine that this will. I think it'll do as well as anything I've done with lively legs, and um, under the right conditions and presented the right way, I think this will catch some fish. And I got to play with toys that aren't normally used for fly tying. So there you have it. And I suppose I can make the SVG file for the Cricut available to folks if they want it. I hope this helps you out. It's kind of something different. And if you want to learn more about me, look me up on Amazon. And until next time, be safe.